Hey Mary, it's July 16th, 2014, and I know I'm running late on this blog post, and I'm really sorry, but on that note, fun fact, you know how much I love popcorn, so imagine that today, in 1907, the American king of popcorn, Orville Redenbacher, was born. How awesome! Okay, my excitement aside, that was completely irrelevant to the topic of today's blog, so let's get to it. One of my favorite stories is Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie, so much in fact that I actually wrote my Common App essay on the fact that I wanted to grow up to be Peter Pan. And while you contemplate the paradox that is that sentence, I'm going to give you a quick history lesson. Peter Pan's first appearance happened in 1904 in a play by J.M. Barrie called The Boy Who Wouldn't Grow Up, and later he adapted it into a book called Peter and Wendy in 1911. And while yeah, it would be awesome to never grow up, the reason I love this book so much is mostly because of the author and how great he was, and here's why. In 1929, there was a non-profit children's hospital called the Great Ormond Street Hospital, and it was super great, one, because they never charged their patients for their services, and two, because they had super teeny tiny children-sized beds and they were the first hospital to ever do that. But there's always a sad part to every great story. The hospital was running out of money, they were going bankrupt, and the directors were considering closing it down. Until, out of nowhere, they received a donation large enough not only to keep the hospital doors open, but to keep them thriving for decades. These crazy donations remained anonymous for 8 years, until 1937 when J.M. Barrie died. This is when they found out that J.M. Barrie had been donating 100% of the proceeds from all of his Peter Pan works to the children's hospital. Hello, scoring major life points. And as if this weren't enough, once he died, in his will, he wrote that all the proceeds from all Peter Pan related things would go towards the Gosh. Not just his novels, not just his plays, everything. He gave the rights to Peter Pan as a concept to the children's hospital. And the only condition was that they could never tell anyone how much money they made. Why can't the entire world be this awesome? So the reason I brought all this up is because today's blog post is about a quote from Peter Pan. The moment you doubt whether you can fly, you cease forever to be able to do it. Let's talk about self-doubt. And yeah, I could probably sit here and talk to you about my insecurities and lack of self-confidence for quite a while, but instead I'm going to tell you a couple stories that I'm sure we can probably all relate to in one way or another. So I'm sitting in general microbio, MCB 3020, basic bio course, 450 people plus in the class, I'm just another person sitting in the lecture hall, until the professor asks a question. Anyone who gets this question right gets 5 extra points on the next exam. The legions of bacillary angiomatosis in AIDS patients are very similar to the hemangiomatous nodules of which bacteria? Silence in the lecture hall. And meanwhile, my brain's like, Bartonella bacilliformis, Bartonella bacilliformis, and my hand's all like, and I'm like, no, and I just can't. 5 extra points on my next exam, and did I raise my hand and say the answer? No. And why not? Because my brain's all like, what if you get the question wrong? What if you raise your hand and you get it wrong and the professor thinks that you're stupid? Blah, 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 blah. And while I'm suffering this internal debacle with myself, the idiot who Google searched on his phone raises his hand and goes, Bartonella bacilliformis? What? I'm sure we've all been there before, so why can't we have a little faith in our own intelligence? And even worse than this is every time I go to a restaurant. For example, every time I go to Steak and Shake, I order the exact same thing. Every time! And if you've never been to Steak and Shake, it's a burger place where me and my friends kind of just all end up in the middle of the night because the burgers are dirt cheap and the shakes are half off after 2 a.m. But the point is, every time I go to Steak and Shake, I order the exact same thing. A guacamole steak burger and a vanilla milkshake. And yet, to this day, every time the waitress comes to ask me what I want, I have this panic attack. What if I want a Royale burger and a red velvet shake? What if I want a crunchy jalapeno burger? What if I want a Frisco melt? Elena, you don't even like Frisco melts. What are you saying? And if you're wondering why I can list off Steak and Shake menu items from the top of my head, I have a problem. But anyway, at the end of this giant internal crisis that I seem to have every time they ask me what I want, do you know what I order? Do you know what I order? A guacamole steak burger and a vanilla shake, please. That whole stress attack was so unnecessary and so uncalled for. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we trip ourselves up? Why do we think twice about what we're gonna do when we know what we want in the first place? And yeah, right now I'm talking about my order at Steak and Shake, but this applies to everything. If you know what we want in life, why is there such a need to doubt yourself all the time? J.M. Barrie said that if you think you can fly, you can, and obviously he was doing something right, so why don't we take his advice? Peter Pan, General Microbio, and Steak and Shake all in one vlog post? Beat that, Mary. That's all I have for you today. Why don't you guys tell me about some of your cool stories about that time when you were like, no, I can't. You get the point. Do it now, in the comments, right now, go. Bye, Mary. See you next week.